So thank you very much, Sedigas, for organizing this event. I've been told to keep it quite short because lunch is approaching and hunger is starting to kick in. So, but anyway, I think I'll get straight to the point. We've been talking about geopolitical tension, tariff threats, wars, but of course there's an underlying theme, which is the energy transition, right? Which is still a pending task, and all these factors together they have an impact on the viability of businesses and on competitiveness of companies. So I think the headline of the roundtable is pretty spot on, and I'd like to start from there and ask you how you think Europe can navigate the energy transition and remain competitive at the same time. Andreas, we can start with you if you want.
Sure. Thank you very much indeed for the invitation. And if we want to understand the role of gas in the energy transition, I think it's always interesting to start with how the European institutions and how the European Commission actually sees the role of gas evolving towards 2030, 40, and 50. And I think here some of the numbers are quite revealing, because of course we've agreed quite recently on a very comprehensive legislative package termed Fit for 55. I've heard that term quite a few times this morning. And according to that trajectory, assuming that we implement this on time, the institutions saw natural gas demand decline by around 100 billion cubic meters by 2030. Now, fast forward to today, as a result also of the energy crisis, we've had kind of more accelerated reduction of natural gas consumption, and today we are already reducing by 80 billion cubic meters, more or less. Now, what is interesting is if we look at the forthcoming trajectories, whether it's REPowerEU or the 2040 climate targets, according to the European Commission, we will reduce further in the next 4 years our natural gas consumption by 150 billion cubic meters. So it is, from our perspective, rather aspirational than realistic, especially if we look at how have we actually so far reduced our natural gas consumption. And a part of it, of course, is structural change also in the power sector. So we have additional variable renewables. Wind and solar has contributed, and that's probably the single positive element. The rest is either good luck, because we had milder winters in Europe. We had improved hydro capacity and nuclear capacities because of improved water levels. And the other part is quite unfortunate demand destruction in industry, which is certainly not economically sustainable or socially sustainable, and clearly not a result of an effective decarbonization strategy. So with that in mind, how are we supposed to deliver the additional 150 billion cubic meters of further demand reduction in the coming years? From our point of view, clearly, this is a gross overestimation about how much the sector can actually reduce. Now let's look at what are some of the key drivers, and I don't want to take too much time. But the key driver in REPowerEU and in the 2040 climate target impact assessment is electrification. For the past 30 years, the share of electricity in final energy consumption has been somewhere around 23%. Now, within the next 4 years, 5 years, that is supposed to go from 23% to 35% by 2030, somewhere around 50% in 2040, and 60+% in 2050. We can discuss whether that's desirable, but I think it's highly aspirational. And what happens if this doesn't materialize? And I've been just earlier this morning reading a LinkedIn post about Europe is already overcontracted. We have more gas supplies available than what the trajectories say. Well, but indeed, if it doesn't materialize, we will need significantly more gas than what is currently projected.
Thank you. Herman?
Yeah, I just can only concur with you what you were saying, and maybe to add also to a little bit of the numbers which have been said, to add some more numbers to it, is if you look towards 2050 and the gaseous supply, so that is without hydrogen, that is between 70 to 80 BCM forecasted by the European Commission. I'm not even sure if we can call it aspirational. I think that is something not, say, cornered or, how to say, fundament within reality, especially if you look towards renewables. We are representing, and I'm representing the biogas sector within Europe. We can produce at minimum 150 BCM by 2050. So the message here is, and that is beside hydrogen, the message here is we can provide enough gas, renewable gas, at low cost as well, towards the future. And we need to make sure that if we do this, that we are not, say making things more difficult than it is. Just make sure that it rolls out and we keep the gas infrastructure as we have it now.
Anne.
Thanks, Thomas. Let me bring this conversation to probably a step higher on your question on the energy transition and how we can ensure competitiveness in Europe. I truly believe that a well-designed and implemented energy transition can for sure boost competitiveness in Europe. But if it's mishandled, it can for sure hinder our ability to compete in a very, very complex geopolitical global context. I'm representing here the industry, and let me just go back to what's happened over the last decade. The industrial tissue of our continent of Europe has been decreasing over the last 10 years, whilst other geographies have increased the industrial production, US, China. So we all know this diagnosis, and what are the recipes? What can Europe do to revert this tendency? So Draghi's report last September stated, outlining some guidance that I would like to summarize in 3 points, which I think are absolutely key to revert the tendency and ensure that we can perform a good energy transition whilst maintaining competitiveness in Europe. Three pieces of, 3 recipes for this. The first one, Europe has to promote competitiveness in the regulation, so we need a bit of a radical shift in this. We're beginning to see the signs, but there's still work to do. Number 2, it's been mentioned in different panels along the whole session today, and is the energy trilemma. Decarbonization alone is not enough. We need to ensure that we balance out security of supply and affordability as well. And third, which is the guiding principle of energy transition, or should be at least, is the principle of neutrality, technology neutrality. I believe that regulators, policymakers should not be the ones choosing which technology should prevail. Instead, what we should have is a good framework that would allow all different technologies to compete and succeed in the energy transition. The Green Deal established very ambitious goals that are here to stay. We're not questioning them at all. But the road needs to be open for all technologies. Let it be renewable fuels, liquid gas, whatever decarbonizes. Renewable electrons, renewable molecules, they all should be part of the mix. That is my message on your question.
Piotr.
Now it's to me. It's a very good panel because we tend to share the views on the main points. And it's very difficult for me because I'm the last one, so I have to say it in a way that I'm not fully repeating what was said by my predecessors, but I will try. And I would like to take this question from the angle of infrastructure. Well, representing ENSOC and European TSOs for gas and increasingly also for low-carbon gases, I would like to start here with things that we probably all know, but we have to underline that basically in Europe, we have at our disposal the best developed transmission distribution infrastructure in the world. Our continent is having the best assets that send out loads of energy. They have a lot of capacity. They interconnect basically all the member states, and they are giving the foundation on our internal market, which is of course reaping the benefits for the end consumers. Not mentioning, especially within the last 2-3 years, how instrumental it is for our security of supply and how it has helped to manage the energy crisis, the gas supply crisis, without any incidents. And of course, also with that availability, it also helped to bring down and equalize the prices at the end. And this infrastructure is also a cornerstone for energy transition. Why? Because at the first stage, it can assimilate the growing numbers of biomethane without any huge technical adjustments, so in time and in the money. And as you know, each molecule of biomethane in the network is more security of supply and more sustainability for European energy system. Secondly, if we talk affordability, if we look at infrastructure, we provide this competitiveness, because if we use existing assets, if we use them in a way that we can repurpose them to the new gases, for example, to hydrogen, we can do it very quickly. So we have this need for speed, and then we can do it at the fraction of cost of new investments. We can do it at 20% of capex of the new investments, not mentioning the procedures and of course any let's say red tape or proceedings we can avoid. So these are I think the main features that we have to look at, and that's why we should base also our transition. So there will be no transition without transmission, let's say. Secondly, and it was mentioned here, I think it's also important to look a bit broader and not to concentrate when we discuss energy transition in Europe on one vector. So of course it was mentioned here, electrification, but I think we have to take a bit more neutral approach, technology neutral approach, and look at all possibilities, so all energy vectors. We have to look at how natural gas is bringing value to the system currently with flexibility, with storage, with support of renewables, how the role of new gases will take shape when we go further, so how we should use this infrastructure for providing the flexibility to the growing intermittency of the system if we want to have more renewables. We may then discuss how much electrification ultimately we will have in Europe and what is needed, but it won't happen without backup, without electrons, and without this flexibility, or also the solutions that help us to manage the curtailments and also reap some economic value where we cannot do it with existing electricity infrastructure, which of course development is also, I would say, if we look at cost perspective, it's still more costly than using assets with molecules. And finally, without molecules and its infrastructure, it will be very difficult to decarbonize hard-to-abate sectors. So also finally maintaining our industrial base in Europe. So hydrogen, and finally also CO2 in its infrastructure. I think that this is very important. And maybe to sum up in the framework of what we discussed now with Clean Industrial Deal, I could say we welcome that this initiative, but how warmly we will welcome that, it will also depend on, for example, if our policymakers treat grids and the grids plan in a more broader manner, not only electricity grids, but looking at all sorts of grids and infrastructure together in the principle of energy system integration.
Thank you. So I jotted down a couple of interesting points. Fact, basically, that we have an edge, a very good infrastructure plus a single market. But then, I mean, I guess that's probably a matter of policy, right? So I would like also to bring in hydrogen, and I was thinking about some initiative that has been taken, the hydrogen strategy, the hydrogen bank, also the idea of boosting the production of biomethane. But still, I mean, there's a lot to be done, right? So I would like to ask you, what more is needed to actually scale up these solutions? Maybe, Andreas, we can start again from you.
Okay, looking at hydrogen and then biomethane, it's interesting. We come up with a great strategy on how to boost hydrogen. The hydrogen economy, we create a whole regulatory framework for hydrogen, and then we come up with the rules for actually producing renewable hydrogen, which add about as much cost to producing renewable hydrogen as it is to produce gray hydrogen. So we're not really helping the market to develop. When you go to low carbon hydrogen, first of all, we have absolutely zero incentives for low carbon hydrogen. We're still discussing the definition of low carbon hydrogen, so how are we going to produce it? The drafts or the proposals that are out there suggest we're not going to produce any low carbon hydrogen anytime soon either, because with the default values that are foreseen, you cannot actually meet the thresholds. We don't have methodologies in place to demonstrate life cycle emissions. So that's also not happening anytime soon. So in a way, we have really managed to create a framework that prevents that market from developing as fast as it is necessary and as fast as it probably could have and should have. For biomethane, the picture is perhaps slightly different, but there we lacked the political support. In the Clean Industrial Deal, and I always mix it up, in Clean Industrial Deal and Affordable Energy Action Plan, in one of the two, there was one short reference to biomethane, and that's it. We failed in the Fit for 55 discussion to make the projections legally binding, so there are no targets. Now with the recent communication, the Repower EU 2.0, if you like, there's a bit stronger emphasis on biomethane, so perhaps that is changing, but there's still a lot of homework to be done in order to scale that sector, and I won't steal the thunder of Harman, so I'm pretty sure he will pick up on those points.
So actually, there was another question, but I want to ask it to you because it would be too easy to to answer. But basically, I mean, just look, and I might be wrong, that there's a lot of emphasis on hydrogen, which is right now basically lacking market fundamentals, and biomethane has been somehow neglected. And I mean, it's a drop-in replacement for fossil alternatives. Probably would be easy. So probably I can also add this other angle to you, which again, it would have been too easy for you to answer. What do you think, Anne?
No, I agree, of course, what Andreas was said. And what I would like to do is bring it back to Spain for the moment, because in Spain we have a hydrogen target, and it's quite ambitious. Logic, because you have a lot of sun, so hydrogen we see as our little brother. And of course, I hear a sniff here and there, but they are smaller than biogas and biomethane together. And there is no real support for biogas and biomethane in Spain. If you look at the target for hydrogen for 2030 in Spain, it's exactly the same as the potential for biogas and biomethane in Spain as well. So that is 4.1 BCM, or translated to 40 terawatt hours. Now, I've been saying so I don't want to bash hydrogen, so we really need hydrogen, so let's have that on front. But I often say in my speeches that €1 invested into biomethane will actually fully revolve in the European economy. And although I see a lot of people nodding when I'm saying this, let's turn this around. If you look towards what is needed in investment on hydrogen to reach the target into the CAPEX target in Spain, that is 33 billion. That 33 billion, 60% of that will flow outside Spain. So that will be around about 16, 17 billion. I can't do the math very quickly. But it goes outside Spain, maybe even higher, and most of that goes in the end towards China. If you take that same target of 40 terawatt hours and you place that on biomethane, we actually use only the 17 billion to reach that. And when we do that, we are cheaper in the production per megawatt hour. We provide organic fertilizers on top of that, and we provide the needed biogenic CO2 for the future emissions. So this is where it goes wrong. So we need to make sure that biomethane, so this is Spain, but also on the European level, takes the center stage on the renewable gases together with hydrogen.
Anna, for you, it's not just about hydrogen and biomethane, right? You do also more. So.
Yes. I think, again, I'm going to bring the conversation a bit to a higher level. And of course, it's not just about green hydrogen or biomethane. It's about all technologies that decarbonize. Again, going back to my initial thoughts on technology neutrality. Green hydrogen for us, it makes sense for our refinery to change the grey hydrogen that we currently use for green hydrogen to produce renewable fuels, which is the core of what we do in our refineries. But then I'd like to perhaps put on the table a topic which is the inconsistencies of the regulation. So on one hand, Europe has been promoting renewable fuels, but then on the other hand, not all the pieces of legislation accompany these great objectives of the European Commission. I'm just going to give you, I'm very cautious of the time, we only have 9 minutes, so I'm going to just give you a quick example. Perhaps in the transport sector, I think it's a very clear case. So renewable fuels are recognized for the maritime sector and aviation sector. That's very good. Yes, we'll agree with that. But then road transport has been neglected. We have some regulation like refuel aviation, maritime, which, as I said, completely embrace these type of fuels. But then the CO2 standards for light-duty and heavy-duty vehicles, on the contrary, they don't recognize them. This is a complete disconnection from the industrial reality. We cannot produce renewable fuels just for aviation and maritime. It's completely disconnected from the industrial reality. It's not technically or economically viable. So my message here is we need a regulation in the EU that would have a perspective from a value chain perspective. So we need to ensure that we have sufficient feedstock, sustainable feedstock to produce our renewable fuels, renewable gases as well. We need to make sure that the regulation in the production processes enable the framework to do so, and then the end users of these renewable fuels also have to be aligned. Otherwise, ultimately, what we could happen is that the business case won't be here in Europe, and investment will relocate to other geographies. Sorry, I'm cautious of the time. I could be speaking here for ages, but
we'll try to manage. Piotr.
The same question about, or I have to also describe some discrepancies in the regulation, because 7 minutes might be too late, too short and too late for that. No, maybe about do we have sufficient framework and what do we miss? I will start with the pluses. So of course we have, when we look at infrastructure, new gases, we have a great state-of-art fourth energy package, fourth gas package, that is basically laying the foundations for ramping up the infrastructure and regulating the functioning of the infrastructure for low carbon gases, for hydrogen. So we have everything, let's say, prepared top down. Now, of course, is the time to go with the deliverables, and I can tell you that already some first deliverables are taking place. So for natural gas and for hydrogen, for cooperation, we are delivering what is subscribed there. So probably also something on functioning network codes. The new entity for hydrogen is being established. It's now being developed. So NOH, that will be a new setup for the operators of the hydrogen infrastructure will take shape. But of course, I think, and here maybe a comment, I think that if we look at the new ecosystem for the gas, for the low carbon gases and hydrogens and the development, we can see that maybe infrastructure is the least problem or least challenge, because it's long-term, low risk, and still, if we compare to building value chains, it's still the least capital intensive and least risk prone area. So probably it will be something that can go forward. So probably we miss now the support on how to really pool, how to create a demand pool, and how to create the business cases and value chain for this hydrogen economy. It's really interesting to hear here in Spain, which is quite promising area for hydrogen. So this is something that that will follow. Secondly, I think it's very important to say that although it's maybe infrastructure is the easiest part, I think if it progresses, it is creating this leverage. So it's creating with the decisions of the operators to build something, it is creating more certainty for the investors, because then if you create an infrastructure asset, you know that it's going to be in the ground or existing for decades. So it's creating clarity, it's creating geography. So maybe we can think already of some no regrets infrastructure options that can stay for longer and bring the leverage to the projects. And then on what we also miss and what we are not fully considered, I don't want to repeat myself on let's say how we now look at the grids policy. Our call is really to not only look at grids separately. So we had the grids plan that was proposed 2 years ago by the Commission. Now we have a new grid strategy. So our call is, let's look at the assets and the grids in an integrated manner. We on one hand, we have to follow the energy system integration principle. On the other, it was mentioned here before, we look electricity first, and then only we add up other things like gas, hydrogen, and then CO2. So let's have a broader look, and let's also not look also cost system approach to choose the optimum way also in terms of costs and functioning.
Thank you. So only a handful of minutes left. I'm going to ask you just one last question, jumping a little bit to a slightly different topic, and asking you to be concise, because of course we have not much left. So as you all know, we had like a huge blackout in Spain that raises a lot of questions about the various energy technologies. There's a plan that the EU Commission unveiled this week about like the roadmap to phase out Russian gas. So I'd like to ask you, where do you think we stand as Europe right now in terms of energy security, and also the fact that we are trying to wean off from Russian gas means we have to import more from the US. So are we shifting from one dependence to another, or is more nuanced than that?
So I'm not going to comment about the Spanish situation. I just don't know enough about it. With regard to the ambition to phase out Russian gas, coming back to earlier remarks, from our point of view, we will need significantly more gas in Europe than what the Commission projects. So we're not overcontracted. We will need to find new sources. We're not just going to get rid of Russian gas by destroying our industrial base, hopefully. So if that is the case, if we need to contract more gas, then let's look at possibilities that actually makes that feasible, that is conducive to our members, who are the importers, to actually import gas and find new supplies. And there, again, European legislation simply isn't helpful. We have a ban of long-term contracts post-2049. That is in itself perhaps questionable, but still there is a problem that is completely undefined. We are making it extremely difficult, and in some cases impossible, for companies to conclude new deals, because we have rules in place for methane emission intensity reporting that, as they stand today, are simply not compliable. It's not that the ambition is wrong, it's that it's simply the rules are not workable. We have a lot of these legislative problems that simply make that more difficult than it should be, or than it needs to be, if we want to make sure that we have an affordable energy supply in the future while reducing our dependence on Russian gas.
We have roughly 50 seconds each. So
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
No, I just can say that biomethane is one of the critical parts to make sure that is going to be solved. So we can produce our own energy, and we can do that in a very sustainable and a good way. So let's make sure that we not only have targets and visions for far away, but we are actually implementing it for biomethane right now.
Thank you very much, Anna.
Completely agree. Likewise, I think we should, ensuring security of supply is not just looking for other providers around the world, which is good. Yes, we should be doing that, but also trying to reach or enhance strategic autonomy, create our own energy. We have the sources locally. We can produce them locally. So let's embrace all these technologies that we could produce here in Europe and ensure that we support these sectors throughout the Green Industrial Deal. We haven't got time. I would have liked to perhaps talk about a bit about that. But yes, let's make sure that we embrace all technologies that we can source locally and we can produce domestically here in Europe.
Thanks. And Piotr, closing remarks for you out of time, so please bear it in mind.
Okay. I won't comment on details on the situation of flexibility in Spain, but structurally it's more and more evident that we need more and more flexibility and backup power in the system. It is already visible now, not mentioning that if the electrification rate grows in the European system, our system will be even more stretched, so we need this backup power. And here I can only quote ENTSO-E, a European adequacy report that is already highlighting that until 2035, I think we will need still extra 50 gigawatts of gas-powered fire generation to balance the European electricity system. So this is the reality in which we are, irrespectively of, let's say, the curves that we are having in the long-term scenarios. And secondly, to the phase-out, I can only confirm that European transmission infrastructure is in position to handle the situation without supplies from Russian LNG. So we will be in position to manage the systems, to fill in the storages, and then to run European system also for the winters.
Thanks. Well, thank you very much to the panelists, to Sedigas, and enjoy the cocktail. Thank you.
Thank you.